Joe Sestak joins us. He's in his second term as a Democratic Congress member from Pennsylvania, and he's risking that seat. He's giving it up to challenge Arlen Specter in the primary next year. And, Joe, I want to welcome you to the Thom Hartmann program.
Good to be back. Thanks, Peter.
And I'm just looking at your website at joesestak.com. You guys are really on it. You've tweeted. We're live streaming the Thom Hartmann program. you don't miss anything, do you?
No, I learned from one of the great masters watching him, President Obama. So we honestly do know this is a grassroots campaign, and we're going to follow that model.
Joe, I want to get your expertise as a retired three-star admiral on some foreign policy issues. But first, you're in Pennsylvania. I'm not. Did the cops overreact, and was there a police riot in Pittsburgh last week around the G20 summit?
You know, this is what I always believe from my days in the military. The first word from the scene is usually wrong. My thing is that I think my initial feeling was there seemed to be some over-response there, as though there was such a strong, firm effort just to make sure nothing amiss was to happen. But to be frank with you, I haven't and don't know enough about it. But in fact, I'm going out to Pittsburgh here this weekend in order just to talk to some people, and I'm interested to see what the aftermath is. But I just don't know enough about the facts. I know what my impression was initially, but I have to say this. Sometimes you just don't know what it's like when you're standing there and things are being done, and you're responsible for maintaining the security. So I intend to, and that's what part of the reason I'm going out there is just to talk and see what people felt about it.
All right, I'd like to know what you learned, because the videotapes that I've seen don't look good. And I was in Seattle at the WTO protests when I believe the police did overreact, and peaceful protesters were being tear-gassed while a handful of vigilantes were ripping down the Nike letters from a retail store there. And so, I want to get to the bottom of it, and if they did overreact, then I think that some of the protesters and demonstrators deserve an apology at minimum. Joe, let's turn to briefly to health care reform, because you've been on point trying to refute some misguided Republicans trying to strike fear in veterans that H.R. 3200 somehow would hurt them, would cost them money. Can you clarify that for us?
Right. H.R. 3200, which I'm a strong proponent of, and if it retains the public option within it, is actually going to reform health care provisions by slowing down the rise of health care cost. And in fact, for small businesses, will start to remove the 18% tax that they presently pay, a tax in terms of paying that much more than do large businesses that cannot, as a small business, spread the risk of having one cancer person in. There's 5 people that work for a small business. They can't spread that risk. So insurance companies tend to have them pay more because of that risk. So what this bill does is actually begin to make small businesses pay less. Individuals will pay less. And that's because they don't have to pay co-pays for preventive screenings. They won't ever in the future have to pay more than $5,000 out of pocket. So I dismiss all arguments that H.R. 32 is actually going to raise costs. It is actually going to decrease costs. And second, as I just finished this portion, it is budget neutral. It adds nothing to the national debt. And that's very important to understand, that the health reform bill, all that is in H.R. 32 adds nothing to the debt. It's paid for.
All right. I'm dubious. I'm not opposed to 3200. It simply doesn't go far enough for me, Joe. And if the elements of the Baucus bill with mandates and the subsidies that essentially are a bailout for insurance companies go through, I'm not really persuaded that there are, real strong efforts in there that will cap costs or make sure that it remains affordable. And a mandate without affordability is something that I'm very uncomfortable with.
Well, you're spot on. I don't support the Baucus bill on the Senate side because I'm not convinced that that bill is going to do anything but mandate coverage for everyone. If that's all we do, we say to the health insurance companies, here's 40 million Americans who don't have health insurance today that we're mandating they become customers of you, when in fact the health insurance markets in America are, according to the Department of Justice, 92% of them are in non-competitive pricing markets. That is, 92% of the times that you go to buy a health insurance plan, you're going to find yourself, like in Pennsylvania, in a market that's almost a cartel, run by a cartel or a monopoly. In Pennsylvania, 70% of all private health care plans are owned by two private insurance companies. So the thing about the public option is the public option begins to let people understand that if you're one of those 40 million uninsured and now you've got to have an insurance policy for health care, you don't have to pick any one of the big companies. You can, if you choose, be in the public health care plan option. It's going to be done with the co-pays and the premiums of those who elect to join it, but they won't pay $20 million to a CEO as their salary, or a $70 million severance pay, or high advertising costs, or try to make enormous profits. And therefore the premiums will be a lot less, and that forces those insurance markets that are almost monopolistic to begin to compete at lower prices. But we mandate a certain level of benefits that every plan has to meet. And that's the way we try in 3200 to begin to have fair competition that bends the cost of health care down.
We're talking with Joe Sestak, Democrat from Pennsylvania. He's a retired three-star admiral. And, Congressman, I want to ask you first, I was pleased to see the shift by the Obama administration on the Bush-era plan to deploy radars and Star Wars missile defense in the Czech Republic and in Poland. I don't think it made sense. It irritated the Russians, and I don't believe in Star Wars to begin with. So I think that was a smart move. It appears to have had a good result where the Medvedev government then joined the Obama administration in tougher language toward Iran after the revelation of this new nuclear facility in Qum. And so I want to get your thoughts on that issue in particular. Then we'll talk about Iran and its presumed nuclear intentions. But do you think this is a smart maneuver on the part of Obama?
Yes. For the reasons you stated, we are now moving the missile defense system that was to have been in place in 2017 into Czech Republic and Poland to ships at sea. And those ships will have a capability in the next 2 years to defend against short and medium-range missiles from Iran, the ones they tested these past few days. And it can protect, as the Bush administration's proposal that was land-based in the Czech Republic and Poland, that system did not protect Israel or southeastern Europe. These ships' capabilities do. So first off, it gives us immediately a capability to protect other nations and our own troops against short and medium-range missiles. And if necessary, it can be enhanced over the years to give a security against longer-range missiles. Now, what it did is it removed the stick in the eye from Russia, in Russia. What it did is it said, look, Russia, we understand that you don't want this here, but we're going to put that capability at sea that defends America.
And Joe, is the Aegis sea-based system more effective than the failed land-based systems? They try to jigger those tests to make them work, and they've been total failures. That's just a fact.
You mean the land-based ones?
The land-based, yes. And is the
yes.
Aegis system that is ship-based, is it
absolutely. The Aegis system is much more effective, and that's why this was a smart one cost-wise. It's going to save over $2 billion. And then you were building a system that may not have been necessary, by the way, because now with Russia's efforts and hopefully China's, we can pivot and apply diplomatic and, as necessary, even economic sanctions against Iran in order to have it cease its pursuit of a nuclear weapon. Look, this is going back to the days where the United States was engaged in the world via its leadership. And it did things not by leading with its military. It did things by leading with the power of its diplomacy, the power of its ideals, and then it's a political military approach. We didn't let down the safety of America by this. We actually enhanced the protection of our troops that are forward deployed. We actually protected Israel. But what we're doing here, it now has an opportunity through a strong leadership to build a strong international coalition to have the real objective, no nuclear weapon in Iran.
Congressman, I've got to take a break here. Do you have a couple of minutes so I could follow up on the other side about the Iranian nuclear facility?
Absolutely.
Great. We'll do that in just a moment. Joe Sestak, Democrat from Pennsylvania, with us. And I want to get his reaction to the launch of the Shahab 3 and the Photoshop 4, that's a joke, by Iran over the weekend. More on the Thom Hartmann program coming up. I'm Peter B. Collins from San Francisco, sitting in for Tom today, and we continue with Congressman Joe Sestak, Democrat from Pennsylvania, a retired three-star Navy admiral. And, Congressman, I wanted to get your reaction to the disclosure by Iran, and it confirms American intelligence that there is an advanced development of a nuclear facility near the Iranian city of Qum, Q-U-M. And this has prompted a kind of a wave of denunciations, and it seems to have unified the Security Council in confronting Iran. But this morning, Scott Ritter was on a morning TV show, the former UN inspector, and he made a critical point that shouldn't we wait to inspect this facility and find out exactly what its purposes are before we tighten sanctions or crack down in other ways on Iran?
Well, according to the requirements of the inspection regime, that you are supposed to actually, if you are following the regime's requirements, announce that you are constructing a new facility. So this is the approximately third time that Iran has not followed what are the laid out requirements. So I'm not disturbed at all by the nations internationally saying, wait a moment, you've done it once, you've done it twice, now you're doing it a third time, and this isn't appropriate. But what they are doing before they apply anything is we are sitting down with them on 1 October to find out what's going to occur. And Iran has announced now that they will let the inspection team come in and look over the facility. Now, will they give it full access? That's what we have to find out. So I think that we're going about this the right way. And again, as we talked earlier, Peter, this in my mind just reinforces that this administration is taking the right approach. It's putting the military option on the back of the table. Unlike the Bush administration, which had it on the front of the table, it's building an international coalition that is opposed together to Iran having a nuclear weapon. I think we've got the right approach here because we knew over a year ago about this facility, and President Obama wisely made this type of an approach, even knowing that the Iranians had this facility there.
Mm-hmm. And, Congressman, one more thought, if I could. We're going to lead our next segment with Norman Solomon, who recently made an unembedded, unauthorized trip to Kabul and other parts of Afghanistan. I am pleased to see that while President Obama selected General McChrystal to manage what, 6 months ago he called the good war in Afghanistan, that he's not, like Bush, just rubber stamping the troop request from General McChrystal to expand our presence there. And I am comforted that we're seeing finally a debate about our presence in Afghanistan, what the purpose is, the mission, and at what point we might exit. Are you too encouraged that we're taking a harder look at this and not just kind of in a blind way pouring more troops into Afghanistan?
Absolutely. I mean, this is what President Bush should have done even before we went into Iraq and during that period of time. It's why you have civilian leadership over the military. The military is to give its proposal of how to deal with Afghanistan. But there are other political military implications that have to be taken into account. What is the value? What's the benefit of pouring more resources in there? And that decision, since it impacts so many other interests of America, can only be made by our civilian leadership like President Obama. Now, that said, I would like to see the president try to make this decision in a timely way, whichever it is. And the reason for that is that if we are to decide that we are going to make an effort to remain there for a period of time and might need additional resources, the longer you wait, the worse it does get to where you might be able to fix it to a certain level. But to have this debate and this process, it's exactly what should be done. We offer advice to the military, but the decision is rightfully made by the civilian leadership, and that's what we need more of, and President Obama has brought that to the table.
Joe Sestak, thanks for your time today. Thanks for your clarity, too.
Peter, thanks again for having me. Have a wonderful day out there.
All right. Great to talk to you again. Joe Sestak, Democrat from Pennsylvania. As we mentioned, he's challenging Arlen Specter for the Senate seat there from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania next year.